All right, let's get this going. Whoops. Welcome everybody that is here and coming on live. Give us just a sec. Go ahead, you can start recording now. Wow, what a weekend we had. We put everything away. We did not do any schoolwork. We didn't hang out on the computer. We watched a couple, did we watch a couple movies? We watched one movie. Oh, you guys didn't watch the movie with us. But it was kind of fun. It was nice to just kind of get away for a little bit as far as schoolwork.
I think on Friday.
You're right, we did watch The Addams Family.
We watched the movie. We didn't watch the second one with you.
No, you didn't. Yeah, so it was kind of fun. So today I gave the girls a couple of options of things that we can do. So the last 3 weeks that we've been doing these live videos, you guys have seen we've covered all kinds of tools and techniques, and now it is time for the girls to kind of put this to the test and really start to work on something. So I gave the girls the option of, where did the other stone go? Did you steal the stone? Anyway, so I gave the girls a couple of options. We could either do a fold formed leaf and solder on a tube setting. Oh, I was like, what? So I was like, you weren't that excited when I presented it earlier. So anyway, and then the other option was to create a bezel set pendant and then kind of start to finish while we do this. And that was the option that they chose. So earlier today, I had them come down into the studio and they picked their stones that they want to use. So let me pull you guys into this a little bit and show you kind of what. Yes, you've said that like 10 times.
What did she say?
She's saying baby dragon.
No, what did Lindsay say?
She's saying hello.
She said,
where's your stone? I need your stone. My loves. Okay, so what they've done, Kate decided to do a labradorite, just a small oval labradorite, and Kiari is going to do a round dichroic glass cabochon, and then for me, they picked out a carved fluorite. So that is what we are going to be working through as we do all of this next step. So the first thing we want to do is, and I depending on what it is that I'm doing, I'll go about things different ways. But today what I'm going to have them do is get the bezel made and then start on their design. So while we're waiting for things to be in the pickle, we will start designing our piece and kind of go that direction. So first thing we need to do when we are talking about doing bezels, we have to get our bezel height proper to our stone. Now there are lots of pre-made bezels out there and it's called bezel wire, and if you talk with traditional jewelers, they hate this stuff. But as somebody who starts out, you know, kind of like with what my girls are doing, this stuff is fantastic. So you can either create your own bezel wire with sheet and you just cut it to size. And it works best if you have a shear when you're doing something like that. But you can use hand shears, you can use a jeweler's saw. I mean, there's a lot of options that are out there for that. So you do have a couple different things. In this case, we are going to use the pre-made bezel wire. Now the bezel wire is going to come in different thicknesses. 30, 28, and 26 are typically the gauges that you can use. I prefer to use a little thicker, but the thinner stuff is going to be easier to bend. Now, in addition to that, I always use fine silver. Well, not always, but I try to always use fine silver rather than sterling silver. Any idea why, Kate? Get into the video. Okay, any idea why we would use fine silver over sterling?
Because it's better.
It what?
It's better.
But why would it be better?
Maybe it's harder.
It's actually not harder.
It's softer.
It's softer. So what happens with a sterling silver is you end up with a spring back. And what that means is when I come in to close that bezel, I close one side I close one side and the other side will pop open, and I'll close that side and the other side will pop open. But by doing it with fine silver, it all just kind of closes nicely. So we'll talk about all of that kind of stuff. You know, we'll talk about the tools that are used to close that, but that's kind of down the line. And I think that this project will take us at least 3 days to do, if not all week, because obviously we can't sit here for hours and hours and hours today. Nobody would watch us that long, for one.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
You guys won't stay with us for 3 hours.
Who knows? They might. But so I think what we'll do, and not only that, Kiari still has some homework to do, as do you. Yeah. So this is just kind of our lunch break and fun thing to do. So first thing we need to do is we need to talk about bezels and bezel heights. When you have a cabochon, it is going to have kind of a domed surface. And when we have something like that, let me pull this camera down here and let's kind of zoom in a little bit. Here we go. So let me get you guys zoomed into this just a bit. Come on. All right. So what we want to look at, and let's see if I can do this upside down here. So we have our cabochon, and it's going to have kind of a dome like this, right? Except for you guys, it's upside down. But anyway, so we have a dome that is like this, and what we need to do is we are going to create a bezel, which is a wall, that is going to go all the way around our stone. Now in this case, this is just a cross section of our stone. Well, you see how we've got where the dome starts, and like sometimes a stone will kind of have a little bit of a shelf before it has the dome like that, right? We've seen stones like that. Yeah. So what we need to do though is we've got to get the bezel up to this part where the dome starts to curve a little bit. Okay, so kind of into this area, not quite up that high. But if we look at, so let's pretend that this is our bezel, right here like this, right? Now see how this one is really tall and there's a ton of space right here. See that? Yeah. But over here, there's not as much space. This is the one we want. We do not need a whole lot of metal. Okay, so if we have a whole ton of metal and we try to bend it over our stone like that, what will happen is we end up with a really wrinkly bezel, and then also we can end up with a bezel that's not tight and it won't hold the stone in still. Like the stone will still move around. Okay?
That would be good.
No, it would not be good. Now, with the bezels that are available, so let's say here we've got some bezel wire. Okay, and here is the stone that Kate decided to choose. Now do you see, and you can kind of see it here on the video even, can you see how much taller this bezel is, the wire, than your stone even? Not just to the curved part, but the whole stone. It's a lot taller. Can I use this wire for creating that bezel?
I mean, you could, you just have to cut it.
Okay, well that's an option, is that you could cut it, but yes, you can absolutely use it. Now for Kiari stone, look at how much taller Kiari stone is. Right? This actually fits Kiari stone really well because the top of this wire is hitting just right where that curve begins. And we do not need much to cover that stone and hold it into place. What's happening is when we have our stone, first of all, our bezel walls, we want to have them straight up and down. Right? And then we're going to put our stone in here and we're just going to bring these walls down just a little bit. All that needs to happen, are you yawning on me already? What? So all that needs to happen is we need the top of our bezel to be smaller than the bottom of the stone. Why?
Because you don't want
the stone won't fall out. Right? But if we have too much, then we end up covering that stone.
It won't look good.
Right. So if ever you see a buried stone, they have too much metal on them, right? And there's options to take care of that. One, you can either file or cut down that bezel, which is a pain in the butt, or you can lift your stone. So Kate, for yours, I have a number of different types or sizes of bezel wire that we can use. Some may fit, some might not. So in the case of mine, let's pull this back over to this camera here. real quick. Okay, so in the case of what I have here in the studio, and I always keep these bezel wires on hand. So I have one that is 3/16 by 26. That 26 means that it's 26 gauge. Well, this is a 3/32 and it's only 28 gauge. And this one is 1/8 inch by 26 gauge. Is 26 gauge or 28 gauge thicker? Do you remember? 26 gauge is thicker, exactly. Okay, so what I want to do, in this case, we have a 3/32, and if we look at your stone here next to this one, the top of this wire right here hits just below where that curve begins. So would this wire work? No. They can't hear you shaking your head, honey. Sorry, there's not enough marbles in there. So no, that would not work. So what we would want to do then is we want to move up to the 1/8, or this is the 1/8 inch. So we want to go up to the 1/8 inch, and we'll again lay our stone next to it. What do you think there? Can you see that? What do you think? It's a little bit tall, but that's okay, because tall we can handle. If it's too low, we can't do anything with too low. Okay, do you want to see that, Carrie? See this? See how it still sits just above where that curve begins? Okay. What's that?
I said hi from Arizona.
Oh, yeah. So in this case, the 1/8 inch is a little bit taller than what we need, but that's what we want. We can deal with that. If it's too short, I can't make my bezel wall taller, but I can lift my stone. I'm just not magic that way yet.
Can't make it taller?
I'm gonna go grab something really quick.
What are you gonna go grab?
I thought you could do anything.
Something.
I
What?
thought you could do anything.
You know, there's certain things that you just are kind of stuck with the laws of physics and nature, and
Really? I thought
you know.
you could bend time.
Well, I did try one time. So anyway, so having it a little bit tall is actually totally fine. In the case of Kiari's and mine, we are both going to be using the 3/16 inch wire. So ours is the taller of the three that I have. Both of ours are a little taller stone. Now, just because my stone is taller, does that always mean I need that taller bezel? No, what determines it? Again, they cannot hear your head shaking, and if you're off the camera, they can't see you.
Nope.
Why? So if I have a tall stone, you said I don't always need the tall bezel wire. Why? What determines which wire I need to use? Where that arc begins. So remember, if we look back at our drawing right here, remember that sometimes we have this stone that has kind of a flat side and then it begins to curve, right? So if I have that, I would definitely need a little taller one to get up into this curved area, right? So yeah, so that's something that we need to kind of look at there. All right. Welcome to all of our people that are joining us. I'm so glad to have you guys here.
Here's the unicorn of the week.
Oh, our unicorn of the week, huh?
It's so squishy.
Squishy.
From England.
Yes. Crazy Mad Fool in England.
Huh?
And Maria is in Scotland. And we have Bobby in Tucson. And we have, let's see who else. Lindsay's in California. And Ellen, this is one of your specialties. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I love bezel setting. This was always one of my favorite classes to teach. So I enjoy it. So welcome everybody that is here. Okay, so now we've determined already which size of bezel wire we need, right? Kate, you've decided you need this size, which is our 3/32, or no, it's our 1/8 inch that you need. Okay, so the next thing then that we need to do is now get our bezel to size. And I'm going to show you guys how I do it, but there's a lot of different ways out there that you can do it. So you'll just kind of have to choose what works best for you and kind of go that route. So let me pull us to, which camera? This camera.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So the unicorn that I have is named rainbow swirl, but that's what it, like, that was on the tag when I got it. But then, I just named it Mush Mush. But,
Mush Mush.
like, Mush Mush is its nickname because it's so squishy.
Squishy and mushy, huh? Okay.
Mush Mush.
Well, Mush Mush needs to leave for a little bit because we are about, I highly suggest you do not have a unicorn in your lap while you try to do this. So either stick it down here on the little step stool or somewhere else. Okay, so back to this then. Oh, okay. Oh, Lee, I know who you are. So welcome back, Lee. Yes, and you were in my booth. It was fun to have you in our booth over there at Auto Fry. So, all right, lifting the stone. So Alice, lifting the stone, I've done that. Is there any recommendation as to sawdust method or using more metal? Even as my teacher used in class a slab of plastic. Sawdust is a traditional method. So interestingly, when I learned bezel setting, you always scoot out of the picture. So anyway, when I learned bezel setting, my teacher showed us to use like the top of like a plastic lid type of thing, like, like a sour cream container or anything like that. And that's fine and dandy and all, and sometimes that's kind of nice because there's a little bit of squish to it, which can actually work really well if you bring your bezel down enough, because then that little bit of cushion can kind of push up against that bezel. I do not use sawdust, and I know that there's a lot of people who do not recommend it because if ever you get any moisture under there or anything like that, it can kind of rot. So I know that there's a lot of people who use sawdust. I've never used that. And I no longer even use the plastic because even for a while I would use like credit cards or things like that. But what I like to do is always have...
use credit cards after they've been used?
Yes, and then you just cut them up.
Again, they wouldn't have any money left on them?
Correct. So I like to always decorate the back of my pieces. I try to make the backs of my pieces not only functional but pretty, and functional in that I am able to pop my stone out, or maybe I need to clean behind it, and especially if I have a stone that has a beautiful back. So you guys know that I really like labradorite, and a lot of times the back of the labradorite cabochons are absolutely stunning. So I will do something decorative on the back as well, so that, if your piece ever flips over, then it's still pretty, or even if it's just a little secret for the person who owns it. So that is something that I always try to do. And so I always lift mine with wire, and that way I'm able to get the lift, but it's usually invisible. Okay, or I can use that wire and incorporate that into the design. And that's actually something that I probably will do on my pendant. So I will show you guys that for sure on mine. We know for absolute sure that we need to raise Kate's stone. We'll definitely have to lift hers. So you'll see a couple of different things on that one. So good question, Alice. All right, so let me bring you back down to this camera here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this taller bezel wire. This is our 3/16. Now, what I like to do is I will just use it right on the coil. So as you can see, I don't have a whole lot left on this particular coil, but usually I will buy them and they come like this. And so I'll just leave it here on the coil, and it allows me to have a little less waste. So what I do is I will put my wire here along a long run on my stone. Okay, and the reason I don't want to try to do it, you never want to do it on a corner for sure, and I try to never have it on a small run. The reason for that is because when you go to bend this, especially if I've got like a square stone or a triangle or whatever else, your solder is going to not give as easily as the rest of your wire. So you want it to be able to bend, and it won't as well right there where the solder is. So there'll be a couple things that we'll talk about. So I'm always going to try to start the end of my wire on a long run. In this case, on the oval, we're gonna go for the long side of the oval. So what I do is I'm gonna hold down my stone, I'm gonna hold my wire right up against my stone, and then, That could have been fun, huh? I knocked Kate's stone out of here. And then what I do is I just wrap this around the stone. And this one is kind of wanting to open up on me. There's some spring back on this, especially when you've got that thicker wire. So what I do, and it just takes a little bit of fiddling, and I know that makes it really difficult for you guys to see it.
Really quiet also.
Yeah, I saw that. So I'm going to get this as tight to my stone as possible. Then once I have it nice and tight here, I'm either going to use a scribe or a marker or something like that to mark. Oh, good grief, now I'm knocking everything over. I'm going to use a scribe or a marker to mark where it overlaps and where I'm going to cut. All right, so there's where I need to cut my wire at this point in time. I don't know if you guys can see this. Oh, look at that. You guys can't even see it because it's not even on the right stinking camera. Check that out. Let's try that. There you go. So this is kind of where it overlaps.
Maybe help.
And there's my mark.
Camera.
What's that?
Might help to be on the right camera.
It is kind of helpful to have the right camera. Now when I go to cut this, yeah, just a little bit. When I go to cut this, my Sharpie is kind of thick here. So I'm going to use a shear, all right? And I'm going to cut to the middle or the outside of my bezel wire. And this might make my bezel a little too big, but I'd rather be a little bit too big than a little too small. Exactly. Now, if I'm using a thicker gauge wire, being too small, as long as it's not too small, is not a big deal because then you can always stretch it. So now when I put this together and I kind of pinch it and hold it closed, I'm actually meeting up pretty well. So I've left myself enough there that I can file these ends flat because you want to have a nice matchup, okay? You don't want them to be kind of like this where you have like a little gap here, right? Because you definitely don't want a gap because then you have to fill that with solder. If you fill that with solder, then it definitely is not going to move very easy again because that solder is a thick surface and it doesn't bend easily. So you want to have nice flush ends. So girls, what is your next task?
Put it together.
What?
Put it together.
Put what together?
The whole thing.
You think you're just gonna go like this and just do the whole thing?
Yep.
Or not? So what is the, well, even I can't do that. No. So what is the next task?
Probably doing this and then trying to.
Yeah, so now you need to wrap your bezel wire around your stone and get that into place. Now, Kiari, I think, oh yeah, we'll have plenty there for yours, Kiari. So here's another thing. Let's see. Trying to think of what we want to do next. So anyway, do you want to try to do that? You remember how I did it? I just held onto the stone and I held onto the wire and you just kind of wrap that around. You want to try it? It's going to be fidgety and fiddly. And that's the thing that's really hard about this next section is that when you're working with it, the stone is slippery. And so it just bing, 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 you know, and you're trying to get it to hold still while you wrap the wire around it. So it is definitely tricky. Now, while they're doing that, another thing that you can do that sometimes is a little easier, you can take some tape and wrap it around your stone, mark that, cut it where you've got your mark, and then you now have the length of the wire you need. Now, that's not entirely foolproof because it doesn't take into account the thickness of the material that you're using. You got it? Oh, nice. Okay, now, actually, there's something wrong here. Can you tell me what's wrong?
It's not tight enough.
Oh, not that it's not tight enough. So what Kate did, remember when we used that nano tape the other day? She stuck her stone on the nano tape, which is very smart. But what's happened is her wire goes like this.
There's a bubble.
But that's not the problem. Your wire is no longer straight up and down. And when we're doing our bezel, we need to keep those bezel walls straight up and down. They can't be tilted in, and yours is tilted in.
Why is it tilted?
Huh?
Why did it tilt in? It
tilted in because your stone is curved, and as you were wrapping it, you wrapped it along the curve, or you wrapped it along that arc.
That's why.
So here's a way that you can fix that. So your stone is actually pretty uniform as far as its size. Let's pull down to this camera. We'll come here.
Dad,
So, did you get it?
I don't know.
We'll see here in just a second.
Keep having to redo it.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. It happens to me too.
This is like the 4th, 5th. I don't know.
You just keep doing it. You're doing great. Okay, so what we need to do here right now, Kate's comes in this direction. If I flip this over, Kate, and then I fit it back onto the stone this way, okay, and then I kind of work that down again, then that is going to help straighten that back out.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So you can always flip it over and that'll kind of help a little bit with that. Okay, so with your stone on here and our wire, now see how up here we're starting to get into this smaller area? It's not ideal, but it's okay, especially since we're working on an oval stone. More ideal would have been if your wire had started here. Does that make sense?
There. You can move it.
Well, moving is a little easier said than done, especially where you already have it to a good shape for your stone.
Flatten it and redo it.
You could flatten it and redo it, but this will be okay because we do have that oval stone. So I think we're okay. So what we're gonna do then is we're gonna take our Sharpie. See how this keeps coming up? And that's part of that little arc that it had. Okay, and that's not gonna be a big issue because we can work with that. All right, so now we have our mark there.
Colored on it.
Yeah, I got it on the tape, and that's okay. Hang tight, Kiara, just to give me a second and I'll help
My
you.
hands are all sweaty.
It's not very easy, is it? Okay, so now what we're gonna do is,
I think it was pretty easy.
okay, so if you look at this, Kate, you see how my Sharpie mark is like the outside here, like this side right here, on here, lines up there. If I cut over here, what's gonna happen?
It's going to be a little long.
Yeah, it'll be too long. Right.
That's what you want.
Well, but we don't want it that long because that's a lot of metal to get rid of. So I'm gonna go ahead and shoot for cutting on this side of that marker.
So
Okay.
you want to cut like in the middle of it then?
Nope, I don't, because again, that would give me too much. Does that make sense? So you don't want to cut too much. Zan Lu, I don't know if I said your name right, Zan or Zan. As far as doing irregular stones, you can still do this the same way. And later, once the girls kind of get a little bit more proficient, we'll talk a little bit about how to do stones with points or other irregular shapes, whether they're irregular top to bottom or anything like that. But since this is their first stone, I wanted to start a little bit easy on them. Okay.
We're going to do another one.
What?
We're going to do another one soon.
We will. We'll do some more. Hang tight just a second, baby. I'll help you. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to cut this. Now, the other thing that you have to be aware of is when you cut this, you want to make sure that you're cutting straight. Okay, so we're going to take our shear, and we decided that we wanted to cut towards basically the inside of that Sharpie. And I'm just going to cut that right there. Okay, so now take this. No, you take this. I'm going to help Kiara. You take that and you fit it onto your stone and make sure that it fits both sides. So if you have one that's a little bit, kind of comes in a little bit, it's not going to fit well because you need those straight walls.
There's a bubble.
What?
There's a bubble.
A bubble. What are you talking about?
Better.
Oh, it comes out, so it's too big.
Where did it go?
Okay, so that's what it means. Oh, did you lose your stone? All right, come here. Let's bring your stone right here, Kiara. Okay, so Kiara's having a hard time, and let's see, here we go. So Kiara's having a hard time.
Not on the right camera.
Oh, you're right, it's not. Thank you. Okay, here we go. So here we go now. So she's having a little hard time, and as you can see, she's kind of rounded it, and then she's pulled it straight, and rounded it, and pulled it straight. So we are doing a little bit of work hardening here, but not too much because it's that fine silver. So sometimes, Kiara, what I do, see how I didn't start here at the end on this one? I started out here in the middle. And sometimes that's a little bit easier because then I can hold this like that, and then I can just kind of push this around. See that? Does that make sense? Okay. So now I'm going to come back in here. Now, do you see this, Kate? This is what happened on yours. See how it kind of comes up at an angle? You see that? And I know that that's really there. You guys can actually see that pretty well right there on that video, where that top comes up a little bit.
It's a lot more noticeable on hers.
Yeah, it is a lot more noticeable on hers because it is so, she's such a tall stone. Okay, so, and it's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that for right now. I'm not too concerned. And I'm gonna bring this around. And see, actually, when I bring this second wire around to that, it will help to kind of pull that straight too and kind of push that down. All right, so now, Kiara, do you see that? See how big this is though? Can you come here, come look and see how, you see how that springs open? You can see it on the video a little bit better. Like there's a lot of space now and we definitely don't want the space, right? We want our stone to be pretty snug. So I'm gonna hold that into place as tight as possible. Bring this guy in. And again, we're gonna mark it with our Sharpie and we'll give that a cut. Now, Sue Ellen said that the shears can compress the edge to make our piece visible after soldering, and that is very true. Okay, so that is something that you have to think about when you use a pair of shears to do your stone. Now, if I look at this, all right, and I know that this is kind of hard to see here on the video, and I apologize for that, but we actually have an overlap here. Okay, so my bezel is too big, right? And we don't want our bezel to be too big. Kate, on yours, it's better to take it off the tape at this point in time. So your bezel is also too big. So look at this. Can you see this? See that overlap right there?
Yeah.
So your bezel is also too big, right? So we have a couple of options here, and here's one of the things that I'm going to do. When you cut these, it's very, well, I'm getting pretty good at it now, so I can usually get my straight cuts, but most people don't start that way. So what we're going to have to do is we need to file the ends of our bezels so that they have a completely flush side on those. Now I have two tools here that will enable us to do that. So one of my friends is online. His name is Ellie Ganim. And he has created a little bezel tool which allows you to lay your bezel wire onto the table. Let's see. We'll bring this here. We'll zoom out just a bit. There we go. So what I can do is I'm going to take this. I'm going to straighten this out a little bit. Oh my goodness, this almost feels like sterling. So I'm going to go ahead and make that nice and flat. And then what you do is you're going to bring this out here just to the edge like that. And we are going to take a file. Let me grab one here.
But now
take a file.
Measure the stone to know if you file off too much or too little.
Yeah, but we know that we have to remove a bit, so I'm not too concerned. Okay, so you just hold this flat up against this. And then you just kind of lay your file here on, see that? You just lay your file right here and you just go kind of straight across. Can you see that, baby?
No.
No? It's kind of hard to see with my fingers right there, huh?
Here, look at the screen.
Yeah, look at the screen. You'll be able to see it there. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do, and then we'll flip it over and we'll do the other side too.
What are you filing?
I'm filing our wire.
Oh.
So I want this end of my wire to be nice and straight. You see that? And so we can use that as a guide. And for yours, I'm going to show you something else that you can use. A little different. Okay, so Kate, go ahead and file yours down just a bit more. And then what you'll do is you'll reshape it around your stone. The nice thing.
Hi, Riley.
Yes, hi, Riley. Finals week.
Have a happy Dragon Day.
I'm glad I don't have finals yet.
I know. There you go, right? Or Kate, you can do that one.
What are finals?
Bunch of mean tests.
Yeah, it's a bunch of tests that you have at the end of the school year.
Like what I did in first grade, and you had to write like a note thing.
No, that is like
You're talking different testing. Okay, so the next thing that we have is we've got what's called a miter vise. Now, miter vises are really nice, and we've talked a little bit about these before. So what you can do is you can open these up. Now, you guys saw in one of my videos, like I put a piece of wire in here, and we just kind of filed across that. Well, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to take our bezel wire. Now there is this little tiny slot right there. Do you see that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to lay my wire right up against that little notch. Okay, and I'm going to, let's see if I can zoom out here so you guys can see what I'm doing a little better. So I'm going to lay this in here right up against that notch, and it's going to help keep that bezel wire straight. Okay, and now, and I know that's kind of hard to see here on the video, but I have this little bit of a wire sticking out, and it actually has a little bit of an angle to that. Okay, so what we want to do with this, let me grab a file here. We want to take this file, and we're just going to go straight across it.
Don't like that sound. I'm leaving.
You're gonna leave? Yeah, it is one of those sounds, huh, that can be. Okay, we're gonna go in a couple different directions.
I don't get how it hurts.
I don't know, some people just don't like the sound. Okay, so now you see how that's nice and flat? See how that's nice and flat?
I can't even see it.
I know, it's because we filed it all the way flat.
Oh yeah, I see.
So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push it through, and we're gonna come over here and we're gonna do the other side. We need to straighten that out. There we go. So again, we're gonna line it up kind of up against that little slot there. Get it into place. Here, and let's do this on our bench pin. Okay. So what we've got set up here, hold on, let go, please let go so I don't get your fingers. We have a bench pin. And this is really how I like to do this, not the way you guys just saw me do that. So let me pull you over here. We'll zoom this in to this camera. All right, so Kiari, I want you to file that flat just how I did it before. Okay. Yep. Remember how I showed you to hold a file though? So you want to hold it, and then your finger is going to come up here like that.
Won't it get slivers?
Nope, it will not get slivers. Okay. Slivers is when you have sharp little pieces that go into. These end up being like little dust. Okay. Yeah, and we want to just keep that nice and flat. Okay, and let's try going a little different direction now. Okay. So Riley, your calculus final looks like it's a stinky one, huh? I think you got this. You worked hard, you can do it. And Sue Ellen, you use the miter vise or you use the little jig from Ellie? I mean, both of which are going to be great. I really do like the miter vise. The miter vise makes it nice and easy. Okay, I think we're good there. So that's nice and flat there. So what we want to do now is we want to remove this. Open this guy up. And now what we're going to do is we are going to put it around our stone again. Oh, this was my stone. So, shoot, I think we might have removed too much on mine. We'll find out, won't we?
You didn't realize that it was your stone?
I didn't. I thought I grabbed yours. But it's okay. We'll figure it out. So now, here's actually, and this is okay. We have actually now removed too much. Okay, so we don't quite come to a close on mine now. So mine, we made it too small. Can I fix that? Kate, you can come back.
Can you fix it without using solder?
Well, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to solder it into place and then we'll stretch it. Did you know you can stretch your metal?
No,
so,
not unless you have like one of those things.
The rolling mill?
And it goes yeet. Like Kurt stretched out a penny once when he needed more money.
More money. Stretches money.
To get more money.
So yeah, so in this case we are going to stretch it, and because I have a little thicker gauge, so this was 26 gauge, so I have a little thicker material that I can use. So
What did Riley say?
Riley said, ah! And then Alice says, if you can do calculus, you are a genius in my book. I agree, Alice.
What
like that whole, all of those
say
math
after
things
that?
to me is just totally over.
What did Riley say after?
And so Riley said, here's my issue. It's going to be subjective, not objective with grading. So I have to explain my stuff really well or I won't get credit.
That sucks.
Riley, you go to college to learn how to BS. We talked about this when you were writing all of those papers. To BS. That is so that you can learn to be verbose and to come up with explanations for everything. You've got this. You can do it.
Go Riley! Go Riley!
Okay, so how do we know if we filed it enough or not is what Kate was just asking.
Riley put thanks.
Yes. So the way to know if you filed it enough is you shape it around your stone again and you try it one more time. All right, so Kiari, yours, let's see what we've got to do. Oh yeah, yours has to have quite a bit removed. Now when you have to actually have a lot removed, instead of filing, sometimes I will go in and just trim it away just a little bit more. Okay, so it just kind of depends. What I want to do first is I'm going to kind of, before on Kiari's, because we do have to remove some more on hers, I kind of hold the bezel up and I look to an area so that I can see through it and see what kind of light gap I might have there. So in this case, Kiari's is actually cut. Ooh, that wasn't so good. I don't know. It's down there somewhere. It's probably underneath that paper or something. She's dropped her stone. Oh, okay, but it didn't break, right?
No.
Oh, good.
That's good.
Yeah, Labradorites can break, especially because they've got a lot of cleavage inside of them. So they have a lot of cracks and things like that, which will allow them to cleave. Sometimes it can be a cool design, but it also creates a weak spot in the stones and they can break. Okay, so Kiari's is actually not too bad. It's pretty straight. So that tells me that when I go to cut this, if I just trim and I'm really careful about cutting straight, I might actually be okay. So I just trimmed away a little bit, not enough. So we will trim a little bit more, ever so slightly.
Didn't like it. No.
Makes the filing sound.
Can't do it.
You have to. So is your bezel still too big?
Still a little too big.
A little bit too big. Okay. And this is just kind of what we go through.
Can you do it?
Yes, I can do it.
Oh, my Daddy.
But how are you going to do this if I always have to do it for you?
Yeah.
Earmuffs.
Earmuffs? Earplugs? There's some earplugs over there. Go get your ear. Oh, here's your earplugs right here. Put them in.
I need soundproof ones. These ones don't. Right.
Well, they might not be soundproof, but they'll definitely, I'm going to have you do the other side.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so again, I'm just going to put this back into that miter vise and we are going to true up those ends because it's always better if you just do that. All right, so let's get this over here. And you want to do this one, baby?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so you do that one and get that done. Okay.
Still gets through.
You're fine. She doesn't like the sound of, stop, come on. Anyway, she's not enjoying the sound of that. Let's see. Yes, Clayton, gravity is working very well in our home. And yes, we do have wood floors. And Alice, my Labradorites break on the wood floors too. Sadly. Actually, I guess it's a laminate floor in here, huh? It's not wood. Kate, you can't pull the file back. If you pull the file back, does anything happen?
No.
No, you gotta pull.
Because the teeth aren't going.
So Kate, just push forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remember, your teeth only cut in the one direction. Ooh, that looks fantastic, Kiari. Nice job. Okay, so Kiari, now what do we need to do on yours?
Round it again.
We need to put it back on the stone and bring it around again and see if it fits. And, okay. Again, I think we took it just ever so slightly too small. But it's okay. You and I had the thicker bezel wire, so we can stretch this out a little bit. If you're a little bit too small, it's not gonna hurt too badly. Obviously, the idea is to not have them to be too small, but when it is, then we can at least stretch it back out, and we're not gonna have to stretch this too far. So I think we'll be okay. All right, how are you doing on yours? Let's see here. All right, so Kate, and yours is hard to tell because you've got that curve again on yours. I think we're actually pretty good with yours, Kate. It is a little bit big. But we're gonna be lifting your stone anyway, so I think we'll be okay on yours. Okay, so what do we need to do next? Now we have them, they fit our stones for the most part. What do we need to do next? What do you think?
Go outside.
Go outside. That doesn't do anything for these.
Put it around this thing and then
Around what
put
thing?
it together around the gem and then you put it by the thing.
So we need to put it together. How do we put it together?
Solder?
Yes, yes, we've got to solder.
I thought you said you don't use solder though.
Oh no, we totally use solder.
No, not for this. I thought you said you don't use it for this or else it'll make it rusty or
No,
something like that.
no. This part we need our solder. Will you put this in the, oh never mind, there's a little cup. Okay, so now we need the solder. So let's move some things out of our way so that we have kind of a clean area that we can work with, right? Let's see, we've got some bezel wire here that needs to be put away.
I want to put it in the bowl thing.
You want to quench it?
Yeah.
The bowl thing.
Yeah.
Actually, go fill that little bowl thing up with water, please.
How much?
Go ahead and just fill it up to like that line. Be careful when you walk with it, okay?
What line?
Right here along the rim of the glass. Okay, so next what we're gonna need is our soldering setup.
Like this line?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we need our soldering setup. Let's adjust cameras here a little bit. So what we're going to be doing is I've got our soldering surface, and we've talked a little bit about this already. In this case, we're just gonna go ahead and use our solder pad, this little GRS one that we've got.
And I get the colors.
You wanna switch over that camera for me, please?
Okay.
Middle one. Yep, that one. Thank you.
The color of this.
It's kind of pretty, isn't it?
Yeah, that was cool.
Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to solder this closed. So what I want is I need to get this to turn into kind of a ring or a circle or something like that. But I need the ends of my wire to meet up, okay? And right now, my wire is kind of coming up to a point. You see that? No, you don't, because you're not even watching.
Here.
Thank you, Kiari.
My hands got wet.
Oh, at least it's only water, right? So what I want to do, and sometimes I will just take a pair of flat nose pliers, and everybody's a little different on how they do this, but I will just create kind of a flat spot, okay?
That spot?
Flat. Yep, I'll create a flat spot so that it's a little bit more like this rather than like this. Okay, see that?
Should I try to make something with this?
So Alice, with young ones, soldering is my fire extinguisher, oh good grief, I can't even talk. Extinguisher ready. Always. It doesn't matter if they're little or not, there's always an extinguisher ready.
We have one in here, right?
Yes, but not right now. What's that?
You have one in here, right?
I've got 3 of them in here.
Good.
Yes, I think we're good. Okay, so the next thing we need, I need that little red paintbrush right there, please, and that gold solder pick. So the next thing I need to do is I'm going to get flux onto my piece as well as some solder. Now here's something that I've brought over. So we talked about all the different types of solder and everything like that the other day. What?
Make your own.
Yeah. So, well, this is wire solder. So we talked about the sheet solder, and I talked about how like you would cut it into the grass skirt, and then you go back and you create all the little clippings, right? Yeah. But you can also use wire solder. Where are you going? You need to know this. Okay.
And then the cutting you did when you were in preschool.
Yes.
And
But
I
this.
decided to make confetti and hit it over the.
Will you go grab me one of those wire cutters back there? One of those big ones over on the end. Yep, one of those. Okay. So my solder, I have another soldering station here in the studio, thank you, over by the sink. And so I usually just hang this next to that area. Well, it's kind of dirty. Do you see the dirt on this? Do you see how it's kind of a black wire right now? Yeah. So it's really dirty. And what I want to do is have clean solder, because remember, solder doesn't flow into dirt.
Yep.
Right? And so if your solder is dirty, then you're kind of in trouble. So we're going to take this green scrubby, and I'm just going to clean off my solder. Where are you going? They're all bail and ship already. All right, so let's see. Girls, what kind of soldering pad? So, okay, so what kind of soldering pad do we use? And then Diane has asked me to talk about this little soldering station. So let's talk about the soldering pad. Now this soldering pad with the station is a little different. This is a newer one for me. And I looked to see if I could find more information about it. And all I was able to find was that it is an asbestos-free soldering surface. So it never did say what it was actually made out of or anything like that. So I'm not entirely positive with the setup that I'm going to be using on that, like what the material is. The other soldering surface that I use a lot in my studio is what's called a solderite pad. And you'll see it's all kind of grungy right now. And it gets really, really nasty, especially with all the flux. But then you just take these outside, run it in a figure 8 on your driveway or sidewalk or something like that, and it resurfaces it beautifully. And then you can just reuse them until they get so small that they crack and break.
I know what I'm gonna use it. I just don't know what it's made of.
But it is a soldering surface, so we at least know that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as this little soldering getup, they are about $160. They're at toolcandystore.com. It's a GRS thing, and to tell you guys, you know what? Like $160 for this is an amazing price, because each one of these is typically, I want to say they're close to like $100 or so when you have that double pivot. So with this, and we're really not going to use these right now.
So was that buy one get one free?
Pretty much, right? And I like this too because it's got the little feet here on the bottom, so I can just set it on my tabletop or whatever surface. But it also has that mounting bracket, so I can just mount it if I've got the whole GRS interchangeable bracket stuff there.
So you paid for this. This was $100. This was $60. You got that free.
There you go. You got that right. So anyway, I felt like it was a really good deal. It was worth my money, and I actually really like it. It's very portable for me, especially when I sometimes solder here at the bench or I solder over at my other station, and I just don't have the little mounting bracket here at this table. Otherwise, I would just mount it right on there, and you can solder there. The other thing that I have here, let me back this up. Let's see, we'll go to this camera real quick. The other thing that I have here is this little surface here. This is called a range clean mat. And it's something that you put on your,
but it's not clean.
Your counter. No, it's not clean. As a matter of fact, it's not even spelled clean like C-L-E-A-N. It's clean like K-L-E-E-N. And I'll include the links for that. I get it through Amazon, and they're 11 by 17 or 14 by 17, something like that. And they come in 2 packs for like $25.
Something by 17.
Yeah, but it's nice because, you know, it gets all gungy and I can just wipe it down. But it's got this little pad protector that's, it's a non-slip. So you can see I actually have a hard time moving this around. So it's non-slip, and then it's got a little bit of padding that helps keep, you know, the heat away from the countertop as well. Okay, so Next thing we need to do is we need to get our metal ready to solder. Well, okay, first of all, we need our solder. So here's our solder. And I have a little solder clipping pliers, but I don't know where I put them.
Wait, that's
Do you know where they are?
solder?
Go over to the soldering station, little green ones.
That's solder?
No, yes, this is solder.
It doesn't look like solder.
What does it look like?
Wire?
Yep, that's because it's wire solder
So,
or solder wire.
so you could make stuff with what? So you're saying, so could you make a necklace with it and then...
I wouldn't, no. No, they actually, they have a green handle and it looks like a flat nose stubby pair of pliers. I don't know where it went. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I've got my little solder chips here. I could either use the solder chips or I can use the wire. And to use the wire, I do.
And then you put it in there?
Yep, I will take it and I'll clip the wire and I'll put it in here. I have this little solder clipping pliers. Yeah, but I'd rather that you use, oh, nope, that's not them. No, I don't see them over here either. We'll have to look. I need to clean my studio better. That's the problem. But anyway, I don't know. They're hiding.
No. Where would they be?
Well, normally they're over there by all my other soldering stuff, but I can't.
Where's the soldering stuff?
What do you mean, where's the soldering stuff? Where do I normally solder, Dingaling? So anyway, so what
Bluish greenish?
I already asked you.
it's not the scissor ones. They look like little pliers. So anyway, what I do is I'll just clip some of these in here. And you can make them long, you can make them small, whatever. And by having a solder clipping plier that I have typically, it makes them all the same size.
Not now.
Yeah, not right now. Okay, so now I'm ending up with all kinds of different sizes, which is okay. You having fun? Okay. What's that? Yep, there you go. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to this screen here. All right, so let's see if we can move. Let me zoom in just a little bit. See where we're at with our camera. Okay. There we go. So my seam is here on the front end. And right now, my seam is not sitting straight. It kind of sits like this.
Crooked.
Well, it's not crooked, but it sits like this. See how it's overlapping? I need it to sit like this. All right, so just like I would do with like a jump ring or anything like that, I'm gonna use the spring back that happens in the metal naturally to help it hold itself together. Okay, so I kind of go beyond where it needs to go and then see where it goes when it springs back. And so that is actually a really good seam right now. Everything is lined up. I'm nice and even along the top. I have no gap inside here, like when I look through it, I should not be able to really see light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some flux. Kiara, you're missing this, baby. You need to see this because you've got to solder yours. So what I'm going to do is I've just dipped this into my flux. This is a Prips flux that I'm using. Okay, and I'm going to coat both sides of that seam. Now, I have a couple of options. I can lift my bezel up like this, and then I can take my solder chip, there we go, and place it on the inside of my...
Is that yours?
Yes, this one's mine. Okay, so I can come in here like this and place this here. Now, dangers of doing this, because this is actually how I prefer to do it, but the dangers of doing this is this metal is really thin and it's totally unsupported. What can happen? No, I don't want to support with the clips, but what can happen with this?
It could burn, it could make the whole thing hot.
Okay, well, and the whole thing has to be hot.
Could fall over.
It can fall over, but more importantly and more failure prone to this one, melt. This part up here would melt, right? And if that melts, then it's so sad, right? So,
Start over.
yeah, and I don't want to have too much solder. So this little solder chip, it doesn't look that big, but that is plenty of solder for this seam. okay? Because all we really need to do is have that solder suck right into that seam and kind of basically glue everything together. Okay, so now...
I thought you said we needed to stretch it.
We do, but I can't stretch it until I have it soldered closed, and then I'll show you what I do. So I've just closed my solder or my flux again, except I should put the right lid onto it, I guess. So, all right, I'm going to move this out of here. Now, the torch that I'm going to be using today is this white torch. I think it's called the Max Bolt. Yeah, so I like this one. I think it's called the Max Bolt. I can never remember. Never remember which one it is. But again, I'll link to it again in the description after the video. It is a little hottie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release that safety down here. I'm going to ignite it. And then I'm going to flip this little switch here so that the torch stays on, and then I can let go with my thumb. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come into our piece, and I'm actually going to heat up the top of this, and then I'm going to come around. It won't if I'm very careful. Okay, I'm going to take the base of this off so that it's not in my way. Now the torch is in my non-dominant hand, which is my left hand. So see how I'm going to circle around our piece here. Okay, let me actually pull this out just a little bit so you guys can see a little better what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to circle around, and as I circle around, I'm going to come closer and closer, and then I'm going to kind of concentrate here inside the middle of this. Did you see my bezel start to tilt and move? Is it in the way? Okay. But it does start to tilt and move a little bit. Oh, did you see that? Okay, so our solder flowed, but it didn't flow completely where I want it, so I can use that pick. Remember I told you that this pick is like your fingers? Because I wouldn't want to put my finger in there and spread that around, right?
Sure, I thought you would.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip this over, and I know you guys aren't going to be able to see this on the camera, but I'm going to heat up the seam from this other side to help pull that solder through. Okay, because I just want to really make sure that I've got a good, nice seam, and I do. Now I'm going to quench my pick.
Where's the thing to put it in?
Your tweezers right there. Okay, so you want to pick that up and quench that for me. Okay, now once you hear that little psh, what can you do with your metal?
I thought you had a different kind.
What do you mean? A different pair of tweezers?
Yeah, that was like that.
So once that's now been in there, now I can hold this in my fingers, right?
You had a different kind.
Right.
It was almost like this, except it had the wood things on.
Okay, now if I look at this, I actually see something that happened. So remember how my bezel wanted to overlap like this?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I brought it down so that it's flat, but as that metal relaxed, it kind of came up a little bit. So I'm still flush here, except now it's just kind of up a little bit. So that means I've got a little bit of cleanup or work that needs to be done. You want to go put that in the pickle, please? Because we've got to clean up that seam, and then we can start to stretch and reshape our bezel to make sure it's the right size. Okay, are you ready? Yeah, you think you're ready for this?
We've been doing it for 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 15 seconds.
Oh my goodness, we've already, it goes fast, doesn't it? Okay, so on yours, we are going to create a flat spot. You think you can make that so that those two ends come together and meet? Do you remember how I did it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so notice that if I push this in here, did you see it spring back out? See that? So you can use that. Now see how I put it back together? It snaps together. That's kind of what we want to see.
33 people watching. Thank you, 30 people.
Yeah.
33 people watching.
I was about to say, what about the other 50 people?
Okay, so we actually have a pretty good, we've got a good seam there. Everything is lined up. So the other thing we want to do is we want to make sure our bezel sits together like this, but it doesn't have any of this. Okay, we don't want any of that, and that's easy to have. And then the other problem is that we don't want to have any kind of V like this. Okay, and we also don't want to have any of this. Okay, so it needs to be totally straight here and totally straight here, right? So that's kind of what we want to look for. So if you take this and you hold it up to the light, you can see a little bit of light through it, right? You see that?
Yeah.
So what that means is right now we kind of have it like this. We need to make sure it comes together like that. And so if we look at it this way, you can see that you kind of just need to twist just a little bit to get that closed. Okay, this is the fiddly part of this. All right, and I think we're good. Do you want to try it with the wire up this way?
If it's easier.
I find it to be a little easier, but not everybody does. Okay, so.
Which one's easier for a kid?
Hey, guess who's on here? William Cobb. Do you remember who Will Cobb is?
He's the person that sent me the unicorn and the Zots?
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so now that we've got this on our soldering board.
When we got it.
I know. All right, so now you've got your soldering board. What do you need to do? So here's your paintbrush. What do you need to paint on?
I think we're running low on Zots now.
Are we running low on Zots?
Yep.
Hear that, Will? We're running low on Zots. Good. Yep, you need to put your flux down. We also need flux on the other side. Okay, so you want to have that seam really good and fluxed. Yep, go ahead and put a little bit more on that side. All right, and go ahead and tip your piece back up. There you go. And you want to be very careful not to touch where you just put your flux. Why?
To get it so it's not dirty.
Exactly. We don't want to get the dirt in there. Naz from Belgium, welcome. Glad to have you here. Okay, if you try to do it with those tweezers, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, I think.
I think it got windy and cold outside.
What happened to the other
This
tweezers?
pair?
Yeah, that are like that.
Okay.
Didn't they have this on them?
I don't know. No, they did not. What?
It's now windy and cold outside.
It's windy and cold? Not for very long. Okay, we're going to be hitting 80 degrees this week, guys.
Yay!
All right, so here is your little piece of solder. What I want you to do is, you can either do it with a paintbrush or you can do it with the tweezers. You want to lay your solder right there into that crack so that it runs along with the crack. Here, just do it with the tweezers. But be careful because that little piece can slip right out and it goes bing. Good, now, you see how your solder is going this way?
Yeah, a bit.
Can you fix it so that it doesn't? Yep, you need to scoot over. All right. Oh, we're kind of close. You want it to sit right there inside the seam. It's kind of hard, huh? There you go. Good job. Okay, so are you ready to help me with the torch? You want me to do it?
I'll try.
You want to try?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So what we're going to do,
Is it on the safety?
the torch is already on. Okay, so what we're going to do, that's okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to come in gently.
I just saw something go poof.
Yeah. So remember, what does our flux goes through? Phases.
Like sugar.
Brown sugar. Oh, not brown sugar
It
first.
was powdered sugar.
Yes.
Then
Oh, there it went.
Yeah.
Okay, but now it went kind of off to the side, so we're going to pull this. Oops. Okay, hold on, because now I'm soldered to the thing. There we go. Okay, so we need to just gently bring this over and see what I do. See how I kind of bring that into there? So now, what? Kate, honey, when we're soldering, you can't distract me like that, sweetie. Okay, and I think we're good. I think we've got a nice, beautiful seam on there. Nice job.
what does it say?
It said to pull our hair back. We should have pulled our hair back a bit. Okay, so don't put it back on the board. Why not? The board is hot, right? So you don't want to pour it back on the board. Okay. All right, so now we have our bezel. You want to go put this one in the pickle? Are you ready to do yours?
Sure, yes.
Yeah? Okay, so now we have that. Let's see. Trying to catch up on our comments to make sure we've got everything. All right, stop putting water on the board, please. What you can put...
It's dry.
It's not dry. It's going to be all wet now. Okay,
No,
so
not
now...
dry, like not hot. I meant
All right. And actually, Kiara did a pretty good job. Way to go, dude. That was your first time using the torch. Nice job.
Wait, do it again.
Was that not hard enough the first time? Okay.
I'm slipping away.
All right, so now we've got that part done. So Kate, are you ready to do yours?
No. Bye-bye.
No?
My hand's buzzy. If she doesn't want to do it, I will do it.
Oh yeah, you enjoyed that, huh?
Yes.
You've been bit by the firebug.
Huh?
You've been bit by the firebug.
What's that mean?
Right.
It means that you like doing it. Here's a trick for you
That's
guys.
because I also have too much energy.
Okay, so what I want you to do is get your bezel so that it is right. Now here's a trick for you guys. If you have that bezel where it kind of sits like this, what you can do is you can take a pair of flat nose pliers and you can put it on your wire. I'm trying to see where I have some that I would be able to. I don't think I can.
The problem is it's in a V.
It's in a V, so you filed it so that it's not quite. Oh no, the reason it sits in a V is because your wire is, your wire just isn't straight. Your wire actually sits out like this, so you just kind of have to manipulate that. Yours, it's fine. See how this like sits up? That's why it's in a V. So when we pull this down, see it now, they match up. Okay, so you had a wire that kind of sat up, right? So now to adjust this type of a thing, what you can do is once you've got your wire where it matches up nice and neat, you put your wire right over that seam so you're holding both of those, and you're gonna just kind of give a little bend down and a little bend up, and it will take care of that type of a thing right here. And so now all I have to do is just make certain, my eyes are getting so bad. I have old people eyes. Okay.
What do you get old people eyes for?
I don't know. Nobody asked me if I wanted to see how perfect your seam is.
I don't see a seam.
Exactly. That's exactly what you want to see. Okay. So now, Kate, you need to come over here and you need to flux your bezel. And Kate's hair is already pulled back, so she's good to go. All right, so now, Kate, flux your bezel. Actually, I wonder if I can get you better on this camera. Let's go to this camera. All right, now you need to flux both sides of that seam. Now, why am I not fluxing the entire thing?
Because you don't need to.
In this case, I don't need to. Not only that, but it's fine silver. It's not going to oxidize the way that, it's not going to oxidize the way that sterling silver would, okay?
You can use the pliers to lift it up.
Okay, good job. So hang on, Kiara, she can do hers. Let her do hers. All right, so now if you want to do yours the same way that we did ours, you can lift it up so that it sits on that flat spot, and then you can solder into it. It makes it a little easier. Can you do that? All right, so now you want to take a piece of solder. So first of all, you want to take your flux, cover your flux back up. Otherwise, your flux dries out or crystallizes a little faster because it'll still dry out and crystallize. Whoops. All right, so go ahead and get a little piece of solder. The ones that are with the wire are going to fit a little bit better in there. They're a little longer, and then they're going to fit right onto that seam nicely. What's that?
It won't pick up.
Then pick it up with a pair of tweezers, the pair that Kiara had. Yep, there you go.
That one?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, that's a little, yeah, it's fine. Go ahead and put it on there, but you'll probably need a little bigger one. So go for the ones that are like completely silver and it looks like a piece of wire. That'll work. Go ahead and just stick it on there. No, it's okay. Yep, that's a good one. Okay, good. Okay, so what you want to do is bring that down a little bit so that it sits right on the seam. You want your solder to touch both sides of whatever it is that you're soldering.
Oh.
What happened? Oh, it's on your thing. It's okay. Go ahead and just keep trying to place it on there. If you need to, use the paintbrush to kind of, honey, use the paintbrush to bring it in here like this. Go ahead and pull out your tweezers. There you go. Okay, so you can use a couple of different things to get in there to move that around. All right, are you ready for the torch? And actually, I'm worried that maybe we don't have enough heat in here. We'll see. Okay, so do you remember how to ignite the torch? Safety down. All the way down till it clicks. There you go. Push this in and hold it with your other hand. Get your other hand ready and don't point it right at your piece. And don't point it down yet. Go ahead and ignite the torch. Now, see what happens is you let go. You have to push this forward while you hold that down. Don't point it at your piece, dude. You're gonna melt your silver. No. Okay, so what has to happen? You push down your safety. You're gonna push this. Now don't point it at your piece. You don't wanna melt it. But don't point it at anybody else either. So we're gonna ignite this and then you're gonna take this and switch it back.
Push it forward.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it had to go one way. Okay, so come in with your, usually I do it with my non-dominant hand so that my pick can be in the right hand. Okay, we're just gonna gently come in, relax. You gotta relax, baby. Honey, you're too tight, relax. Okay, so get your pick in here so that when this solder flows, you'll be able to get it into place. Okay, so we're just gently warming up the entire piece. Perfect. Oh, that was lovely. So now knock it over, knock it over. And now what we want to do is just hit this a little bit with that torch. Make sure we've got that solder pulled through. Fantastic. Now slide that forward and quench it off. Quench it off. Quench it to cool it off.
No. That one.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
You can use either one. I use.
Yeah, you could use either one. It's fine. All right. So now we have our bezels. Fantastic. Go ahead and go put that into your the pickle. See, it wasn't as horrible as you thought, huh? So the issue that we were having is Kate was very, very tense. Like her wrists were just like, "Rrr." So you want to definitely relax a little bit and make certain that you're not too tense or too tight. And the first couple times you do this, it's a little nerve-wracking. Like when I started to do this, I actually used silver wire and we made jump rings. And so I had a lot of different practice. And these girls are going to have that practice soon too. But you guys did pretty good. You did your first bezel. Awesome sauce. Come be in the video. Okay, so our next step, while that is in the pickle, and matter of fact, they're probably already done except for Kate's because the pickle was already warm while we've been doing this. So the next thing that we need to do then is
What happens if you leave your piece in the pickle too long?
Good question. Good question. What happens if you leave your piece in the pickle too long? Well, there is an acid in there, and if you leave your piece in the pickle too long, it actually will weaken your joint. So there have been times where I have done pieces, put them in the pickle, and I forgot about them a couple of days. And then I come in, and even though I had a beautiful seam, it broke. With very, very little effort, you can make that seam brittle.
That's sad.
Right? It is sad when that happens. So you want to be very careful not to leave your pieces in the pickle.
Should we go get ours?
Yes, we should go get ours. Now, when you take it, when you take it out of the pickle, what should you do with it? There's another something over there. What do you do with the pickle? Or what do you do with your piece? You don't dry it yet. What do you do, Kate?
You put it into the little bowl that's next to it.
Do you know what's in that bowl that's next to it?
Didn't you say it was like baking soda and water?
It's baking soda and water. And why do we do baking soda and water?
I don't know.
It neutralizes the acid.
What's that mean?
So when we put it into the pickle, the acid...
The acid off?
Yes, it does, and it makes it so it's no longer an acid. So what happens is when you put you put your piece into the acid, it is going to remove all those copper oxides. Remember how it was all looking black and charred right there at the seam where we soldered? Okay, so when she brings this back to us, it's going to be totally silver. There's not going to be any black or anything like that on it. So it removes all of that, and then what happens is you put it into that baking soda and water, and it no longer eats away at it.
And then guess what? Then I think you polish it.
Not yet, but yes.
once you're done with it.
But we have a little while before we're done because we now need to get our bezels to be the right size for our piece. Okay, let me move our soldering station because we are now done with this. Okay, let me get this guy out of here real quick. All right, so we need to stretch our bezels. Anybody know how we're gonna do that?
That one looks almost like a ball.
You don't think that's gonna fit your piece? Doesn't that like the exact same size as, or shape of your piece? Okay, so let's let's come over
See,
to
it's flat at the bottom.
Thank you.
See, it won't go on.
It won't go on. Okay, so hang on, let's put your piece here so that they can see what we're looking at.
It's like almost like a flat thing and then a curve when it's supposed to be completely
That's
curved.
okay.
Everyone's like, we're out of here.
Felix, you've been buffing and polishing parts today, huh? Well, welcome. We're glad that you joined us. So anyway, so Kiari, what we can do, because this is fine silver, is we can actually take this and try to push it onto our stone, and that's going to help reshape it. Because right now we have a flat spot in yours, right? So why don't you try to push that down onto your stone? Do it right here so that everybody can see.
At least, right?
Right. If it's the right size, you can kind of push this back down onto your stone. So right now, mine's being a little bit tough because I removed a little too much. I removed a little too much. So I need to stretch this. And actually, I'm going to have to stretch mine very, very little because I'm actually really close.
Do I
Oh yeah, very, very close.
Mine?
I think we probably will have to stretch yours just a little bit. Oh, maybe not. Actually, maybe not. So what I do is I will try to push my stone through, and then I'm going to flip it over and push it through the other way also. Kiara, yours is perfect.
Yay!
Yeah.
Everybody shout hooray, hooray. Everybody, 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 everybody. Hooray!
I think somebody is excited. So yours is actually really good. So we are not going to have to stretch yours. Now, one thing that I do see happening is that your bezel kind of does this type of a thing. So sometimes when you have that,
Like
you
the
can, you want to
bumpies?
go grab us a ring mandrel, please?
Like the bumpy kind of thing.
Yeah, it just
It's
is,
just a bit
it's not
bumpy.
totally even, right. And so where yours is round, we can take that. So you want one of the steel ones. No, that'll give us too much of a taper. Just the ring mandrels right there in that formula container. Yep. Yep. Thank you. Does it have a groove in it or is it just perfectly round? Perfectly round? All right, thank you. Okay, so because her stone is round, what I'll do is I will just put this onto a bezel mandrel.
It has
And then,
numbers.
or not a bezel mandrel, this is a ring mandrel. And then I'm just gonna roll this, and I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm going to roll it again. Now because I did this on a wood surface, I'm not stretching this metal. All right, all I did was just form it, and see now how it's a nice circle?
You have
Look at this.
scratches on it.
I do.
On the table.
Oh yeah, because this table definitely gets used. But see, look at yours. Look how good that looks. Now mine, see how mine sticks up right here? Do you see that? And the reason for that is because my bezel is too tight.
Should I go grab mine?
If you'd like, yeah, you can go grab yours. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this on here. Now this is like way too big. Like I would never be able to really stretch it onto this. But what I'm going to do is I'm gonna use this bezel mandrel.
Make it round,
Yep,
but you need it ovally, kind of.
I do. You're right. But you'll watch what happens. So I'm going to use this,
I think I know.
and I'm just going to hammer just a little bit.
Ting, ting, ting.
And I'm doing it very, very, very lightly. I guess I should do it up here so people can see. Yes, because I think we're done with that for today. Thank you. Okay, so I did not do much. Now, look at how the shape of mine has changed now. Okay, it doesn't quite fit my stone. Now I have to be really careful because my stone is fluorite. Fluorite is a really soft stone. So I'm going to change this into the shape of an oval, and now look how it fits. Okay, so I had to stretch it just a little bit, not too much. Okay, and now I'm going to just kind of work it with my fingers to reshape my stone, reshape my wire so that it fits my stone. And again, I'm going to flip it over and just make certain that we have a good bezel and a good fit on our stone. And I actually resized it a little bit too big, but I'm not too worried about that. I think we'll be good.
It's better than too small.
In this case, it's better than too small. All right, so you and our bezels are done. Kate, how is yours looking?
We only need one more person and we'll get 33 people.
Oh yeah? Oh, Kate, yours looks pretty good. I think yours actually might be ever so slightly too big.
But we already knew this.
Yeah, but I think you're okay. I think it's gonna be good. Now your walls are kind of wonky, like some of them stick out, some of them stick in. So what I would do here, just to give myself a really nice flat straight wall, is also put it on here and just do that same type of a rounding motion.
So what is it gonna be?
And then here, hang on just a second, I'm working with Kate for just a sec, sweetie. Okay. I'm just going to pinch that till it turns oval. And see that? Yours might be too big. We may have to actually cut yours and redo that. But that'll be, if we do, we'll do it not on the video.
Are they gonna be necklaces or bracelets?
These are gonna be necklaces. We're gonna do a pendant. Okay. Okay, so this took an hour and a half now to get us to this point. What we are going to do now is we're going to stop for today. I'm going to give the girls the next part of their assignment, and then you guys will see that kind of tomorrow. But what we're going to do, and let me show you kind of what I do for this part of it. So they now need to design their piece. So a lot of times, like I might just create the bezels and I'll set them with the stone because I don't know how big of a back plate I might need because I don't know yet what I'm going to do with it. So some people will just go ahead and lay out like a whole bunch of bezels on back plates and they'll get those soldered up and then they'll go from there. Well, in this case, I think what we need to do is we need to kind of draw or design some of our pieces, right? So what I like to do for this, let's come back to this camera. I like to take my stone and I'll just take a piece of paper and I will trace my stone like several different times on my paper. Okay, like this.
It almost looks like a hidden Mickey, except the ears are too far away from the head.
Now, on my stone, it's got a carved design, right? So what I would do is I would come in here and I would draw. Kate, I already have some paper for you, dear. Anyway, so I would kind of draw my little design that's on here as well. Wow. And now, well, because that way then I know what's on my stone and I can use that as a decorative element. So in this case, let's say, so I already now know exactly how big my stone is, right? And so this is kind of the scale that I'm working on. Well, let's say that I wanted to use this same type of design and I say, all right, well, let's create maybe like a leaf shape for my piece. Okay, and then maybe I'll just kind of bring this around like so. And again, maybe I'll do some leaves up here. And this is just kind of a rough sketch. It doesn't even have to be anything like absolutely certain yet. But so let's say now I've kind of got, let's see, something like that. And then I say, okay, well, I'm gonna attach my chain here, and then in here, I can do some kind of wire design or something like that. But by having this, it gives me the ability to start to sketch out my piece, right? So what I can do here, let's say that we wanna just keep it really, really simple. So maybe we say, well, let's just come around it like so, and maybe we just give us a little buffer around it, and maybe we solder on like a tube setting, right? So maybe we put that there, and maybe we'll add some little balls Or maybe we can put some holes in here and we can drop and make a little dangle or something like that. Does that make sense?
It almost looks like an earring, except a really big one.
A really big earring. That would be a really big earring. But I mean, so you can start to play with this, but by tracing this out a whole bunch of times, you can try all kinds of ideas. So tonight, this is what you girls have to do, so that tomorrow when we come back, we can then solder our bezel into place on the back plate, and we can start to come up with our actual design. Okay?
Okay.
So how does that sound? And then, and again, you don't have to be very good at drawing. Like, you guys, how bad I was at drawing. I am not very good at drawing at all. You just need to come in the video, dude. So, I'll hold on to you. How's that? Anyway, so you want to play around with different ideas. And then also here in my studio, of course, I've got what's called the naughty pile. And oh, wait till you see, because you can take some of those naughty things and you just make them into little balls, because they make you so mad or they melt or whatever else the case might be. So what you can do then is you can take those little balls and they can become decorative elements on your piece. Okay, so you could always have little pieces that you can then bring onto your page and say, oh, how would it look if I put this little ball here? Or how would it look if I put this stone here? Or whatever else the case might be. But that's what we have.
We've been doing this for 1 hour and an extra
and
half.
30 minutes. I know. It's a kind of a long one, huh? And people have stuck with us.
Thank you, people.
Yes, thank you. All right, so that's phase one. Phase one was to create our bezel. And you guys, this was the first time both of these girls ever used the torch.
That's
you guys, have you used the torches? When did you? Oh, I guess you have done a couple things.
I haven't.
Nope, Kiari hasn't. This is the first time for Kiari. So, all right, we will see you guys tomorrow, 1:45 back here. We will have our design picked out. The girls will sketch out a few things and we'll talk a little bit about the sketches and what is feasible and what might not be feasible.
1:45 mountain time?
Mountain time, 1:45 mountain time, same time we always start.
1:45 unicorn time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, unicorn time is whatever time we...
Mountain time.
No,
Unicorn
12
time is whatever we are.
No, 12 a.m. our time.
Don't come then, I'll be hopefully asleep. Okay. Anyway, so hopefully that helps you guys learn some different tips and tricks. I will link to different tools and items that we used here so that you guys can find those easier if it's something that you're looking for. Stop it. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow. So thank you for joining us. Have a good day. Are you not going to say goodbye to them?
Bye, everybody. Have a happy unicorn day.
And a happy mythical creature day.
Oh, and have a happy dragon day and have a happy mermaid day.
Yeah, those two. Have a good one. Bye.
Happy